extraordinary moments come, even when your mind's undone and cannot find a window to your fate. And in one moment, a twist in time, everyone stands still, leaves forget to breathe. Across the room, she looks into his eyes, and this I know, the time will wait for them to choose their destiny. Walk into her garden, and the truth that she'll be to you will come and release you when you dance in Magdalene's garden. When the fruits that she'll give you will open you up and take you to the dance in Magdalene's garden. Magdalene.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, because we have people all over the world tuning in for day 5 of I Don't Believe in Astrology, kicking off with our final Wisdom Watch Party featuring Dr. Alok Trivedi, aka Dr. Rewire. How is everyone feeling today? By the way, that was Colette Baron-Reid, that song. One of our guests from this amazing series. Yes, feeling great. Love it. Transformational, feeling energized. Oh, I love to hear that. And I did see you responding in the chat as we were getting settled. We have people, like I said, all over the world. We have Ireland. We have all over the US, Canada, Honduras. So amazing. We're so happy you're all here. Hi. I'm Lisa, your host of our Wisdom Watch Parties, and I will be co-hosting with the wonderful Deborah during our final live breakthrough session today at 10 a.m. Pacific. Do not miss it. Remember to join us live or on the replay so you can get our bonus code word for our live breakthrough session. I hope you'll join us, and if you can't, remember that the replays will be available on Come Study You after the day's events have finished. And now is the time to catch up on anything you may have missed so far in this event series and scoop up any extra giveaway entry points that you can. This is our final day of this experience. I can't believe it. But we will keep those replays up for you over the weekend so you can catch up on anything or rewatch the magic. Now let's dive right in and enjoy this Wisdom Watch Party featuring Dr. Alok Trivedi.
So we are once again in the guest interviews that are part of my I Don't Believe in Astrology. And I love to have the guest introduce themselves because I think reading that thing is much more contrived than it is hearing you. So if someone were to say on your outer world, not the inside, but the outside, what you do, could you describe it for us?
I love that. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, for me, I mean, I'm Dr. Rewire. I help people rewire their brains so that they can live more optimally, live their authentic expression, and be able to do what they're designed to do in the world.
So I don't understand, Mr. Rewire, Dr. Rewire. So what does that exactly mean?
Yeah, so I've created the first brain DNA test to help understand how our brain is functioning, to be able to optimize the brain so that we can actually be our authentic self. So we can create brain balance. And once we create balance in the brain and rewire it to be able to live in a state of balance, we create optimal performance.
And what kind of doctor are you?
I used to be a physical therapist. I became a chiropractor and then went on to functional medicine, functional neurology, and a student for the last 30 years of my life and continue will probably be to the end of my life.
Wow. And so there's a way to detect the functioning of the brain through a test.
Correct.
Say more about that.
So about 3 years ago, I've always asked the question, what controls that? What controls that? And I started from the muscles to the nerves to the brain to now moved up to the DNA. And I've asked myself the question, what controls the muscles? What controls the nerves? What controls the brain? And then what we found out is that people who deal with sleep problems, anxiety problems, depression, ADD, ADHD, it may not be this crazy idea that it's your fault. It's actually maybe the way that your genes are there. And we look at four factors to determine what that is, like mindset, motivation, your ability to connect to yourself and others, so your self-worth, your ability to sleep and recover. How does the body shut off and recover? And then last and not least, your ability to manage stress and how you're able to navigate these responses. We'll see, can you stay in a state of balance, optimal state of function? And when I use Rewire protocols, I've created 120 protocols to rebalance the brain through questions. And then we use diet, exercise, lifestyle management to get people to an optimized functional state.
And have you had such success?
Oh yeah, I've had over 500,000 clients, worked with clients like Dave and John, Gary Brecka, John Burke, Emmy Award winners. I've had athletes go win the Senior Olympics. So yeah, I've had lots of success over the years.
And
Thank you.
so what is the actual technology? So you discovered that yes, they have ADHD or yes, they have depression, and then what do you actually do to make the difference?
It depends on what the reason they have it, right? Right now in our society, people say, "Oh, I have ADD," so they take a drug, they take some sort of a medication that just suppresses the entire body, right? And what we do is sit and say, okay, maybe there's a cognitive behavioral thing, certain questions that they ask themselves that raise their dopamine levels or depreciate, depending on what the tests say. And we don't know that. And so, for example, the way to do it is you do a cheek swab. You do a simple cheek swab, minute apiece, send it in, and you get the report back, and the report outlines your specific protocol based on your brain DNA. And so based on that, you may need to sleep more, sleep less, exercise more, exercise less, have different questions around how your brain is processing. All of this to rebalance our entire system to be able to live optimized.
So it's interesting because in my new book, I talk a lot about gremlins, which are the unconscious voices that live in the subtle underbelly that
Sure.
interrupt the ability to feel good about yourself or the ability to have confidence or the ability to get yourself motivated. So you're addressing this more at a scientific level, like what I'm talking more psychologically and inserting the observer, helping people step back and look at, noticing. You're inserting another alter. So they're going to determine through the swab the style, what they need, and then you give instructions and specific instructions.
Specific instructions around neuroscience and neurology and psychology to give them the psychological piece and then the physiologic piece as well.
Wow, that is so interesting. And now, with no further ado, we're going to pull up your chart because this is so interesting to be able to see. The interesting thing about your chart, I don't know how much you know about astrology, but here's what's so fascinating is when you were born, Saturn, this upside down question mark, the sun is a circle and a dot. So we know you're a Leo. Here's the circle and a dot. The sun was in Leo. And standing right next to you is Saturn, which is the planet of wisdom, hard worker. It happens only once a year for about a week. And it describes someone who has a lot of discipline and a lot of commitment to following through. Like you can't tolerate mediocrity or doing things halfway. Am I right or am I right?
100%.
And then you have Mercury in Virgo, which is really interesting. Here's how the mind works. It's a very clean, linear thought process where you would constantly be asking why and how and wanting the science, wanting the, really fixated on details.
Yeah.
And then the other interesting part, because you're Gemini rising, and here this is called the AC, or on the outside, it's the AC. It's the rising. What was on the horizon at the moment of your birth? You're not going to believe this. The biggest planet in the heavens, right as you were born on the horizon, was the planet Jupiter, who's 100 times the size of Earth. It's giant, and it's in the sign of Gemini, who loves to talk. Like this is the point of the soul, and you came in with this planet of abundance and gifts and luck, I would say, in the gift of communicating. So I would suggest that probably your curiosity, the Mercury in Virgo who never stops, the Saturn conjunct your sun who's so disciplined, and then this gregarious fascination to keep everybody entertained by your communication device. So you don't really have to sleep very much. Well, how many hours do you sleep?
I sleep 7.5 hours every night.
And how do you make that happen?
I go to bed 9:45. I close my eyes and I wake up at 5:45. I just follow my habits. As you said, very disciplined. I'm very disciplined.
I love
Extreme.
that. I have the exact same rhythm. I have a very strong Saturn, but there's so many people who don't have the gift of calming down their nervous system. And what would you suggest about that?
Well, in that case, what you've got to do is you've got to look and say why, right? And from a neuroscience standpoint and a brain standpoint, you may have low dopamine. And that low dopamine will cause anxiousness. And then you may have a COMT gene that doesn't clear out dopamine. So your brain's always working, thinking. And then if that's the case, you'll wake up between 2 and 4 in the morning, and that'll be your adrenal glands that activate and wake up and say, hey, look, you got all the stress to deal with. And our brain doesn't shut off. Now, think about the littlest things in your brain. Now, going back to circle it back now to wisdom and astrology. I grew up in the world of Vedic astrology, right? Like literally, like my family was big in the world of Vedic astrology, and at least following it. And it was about what's your dharmic cause? What's your dharmic cause? And your dharmic cause is your one thing. But if you have all this chatter and the neurotransmitters of the brain are there, you can't get to that cause because you have all these distractions saying, I got to do this and this and this and this and this and this. So the wisdom gets quieted. And so that's what we're trying to do with these testing.
I love the story. So you've really been able to see a difference, and people are sleeping and they're getting calmer and they're feeling like they've got an option.
Yeah, they have options. They have ways to get to themselves to be able to live their what I call, say, getting your own code. Everyone has a unique code, right? When we have that unique code and that code is yours, now we have to live in alignment to that code. And for centuries, if I would say, we've been following feeling as that code. And with this test, I've been able to take this abstract idea of feeling and trying to give humanity a path through science to say, here's the step-by-step approach.
I love this. Mercury and Virgo. So dopamine, talk to me about that, because I notice, because I have children, the difference of the child who wakes up happy and the child who doesn't wake up so happy. Like they came that way. Is that a chemistry game? And what determines that?
Well, I think there's both, right? I think that a lot of it in my years in the world of astrology and Vedic astrology, some of it's influenced through that, but then it's also influenced through our past, and then it's influenced through our current state in our neurotransmitters. I don't think it's a black and white answer. I think it's a combination of an answer, right? So if someone, say, let's say dopamine, for example, someone gets up in the morning, they're excited, they're motivated, they're ready to go, and they say, I can take on the day, they're challenged. Great, they may be gifted with a set of genes that allows them to be that way. Now, your other child, son or daughter, I'm not sure exactly who, but they may have been born with, a gene break, that they just don't wake up and their body doesn't make enough dopamine. So they may not get up excited, and they may have more anxiousness and more frustration. And so for that person, you're looking at it and saying, they're two different people, need two specific recommendations, right? The person who's super excited, we got to govern them, make sure they don't get overly excited, because that same map can turn them into a super successful entrepreneur or can turn them into an addict on the street, right? Whereas the person who doesn't have that needs motivation, or they're like, I don't know what to do. That also could be because of the way that their thoughts and their perceptions of their past has sort of stifled the growth of their nervous system. So what we have to do is we have to look at all of this person and say, okay, now how do we map this out? And then we move them towards, because ultimately, if we can, the world of neuroscience is if we can rebalance the neurotransmitters in the brain, Deborah, we can have people living extraordinary lives, fulfilled, loving, gracious lives. But in our world, we live in a world where bottom down, we're trying to make everything work. We talk about a body in balance, but a mind that's designed to be happy. But the mind is not designed to be happy. The mind is designed to live and survive. And the way that the mind and body are being taught in the world, we don't have a mental health crisis. We just have a health crisis. And what we need to do is connect the mind and body so that people can live whole.
I love this so much. I totally resonate. So I think one of my questions is, I am one of those people that has a lot of energy. For example, it's astrology. I have a lot of fire.
Sure.
So I have and if we use the astrology separate from the brain and just
Sure.
talk about my constitution with my elements, I have a really effortless ease to be able to get all excited over nothing. So that compounds, or it adds to, I would say, it adds to the ability to turn on my dopamine and go, woo, woo. And what I see in astrology is people that are fire, that are earth and water, who are more internal, more self-reflective, more introverted, that chi energy affecting the brain. And what you're saying is you kind of custom design knowing from the swab. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, we'll get you a test. You can take it and we can go through it. And I can happy to go through it with you and explain to you kind of your DNA and neurotransmitter show.
I'm so excited. And for the audience, this is part of what I don't believe in astrology. This is now, I do believe in the science of the mind, and leaning into a person like yourself who's educated and trying to educate us. So how do people get the swab? And let's communicate that, because I can tell already the audience is like, I want to know how to get my brain figured out.
You can just go to drrewiretest.com. You can get it there. Or you can go to my Instagram, Dr. Rewire. It's on the Instagram page, and it's on Shopify, I think. I don't know. Just go to drrewiretest.com.
Okay, that's a simple answer. Is there any concrete story you can tell of a patient that you've watched the transformation occur?
100%. So I had a patient, young lady, 20 years old, and she followed all the traditional health biohacking things that she's supposed to do in her life. She exercises right, she diets, she cold plunges, she fasts, she does all the things that you watch and say, this is what healthy people do. So she does that. And over the last 8, 9 months, she's probably put on about 20 pounds of inflammation. And the question becomes, why is she putting on this inflammation? So we do a cheek swab. Simple. It takes a minute this side, minute this side, put it back in, mail it off. We get the report. And I said, we got to stop you exercising all this high intensity stuff. I said, I need to change your protocol. And she's like, okay. I said, we got to change your protocol. Instead of you lifting weights 5, 6 days a week, I only want you to do it 3 days a week. I said, instead of you doing high intensity Stairmaster, intense training and that, and I said, I want you to do 1 day of intense training, high intensity training. The other days, I want you to do 4 days of walking. That's it. I just want you to walk. I want you to make sure you get 10,000 steps a day. And instead of you fasting, I want you to eat 6 times a day. And instead of sleeping 9 hours, I want you to sleep 7 hours a day. 1 month, Deborah, she loses 15 pounds. 15 pounds of inflammation. Now, I know this lady personally. I've known her entire life. It's my daughter. It's my very own daughter that I was putting on the health protocols for her life of what to do. And I know that she doesn't go out. She doesn't go out drinking. She's a neuroscience major. She doesn't do these things. And she's like, I watched my daughter starting to gain this inflammation. And I talked to her about it, of course, gingerly as a father would, right? Has to step in that very carefully. And I did. And she was like, no, and I said, something's not right here. And we did the test and she changed and everything changed, because the thing is that her code is not my code. My code is not her mother's code. Her code is not her mother's code. Everyone's got their unique code, and everyone's protocol is unique to
Now you're sounding like an astrologer. I mean, that is the nature of astrology. Everyone has their unique code. And as we begin to unpack, yours is at the physical. It's an interesting distinction. Yours is at the physical level, which is essential. In my system, that's earth, the body, the actual physical reality. And I deal more with the water, the emotional content, to facilitate people's calm based on their love of themselves. So I'm like the Dr. Love, where I help people figure out how can they rewire the internal dialogue. It's so concrete. You get them at the physical plane, and these two will work together beautifully. It's very
What's amazing,
exciting.
actually, right now, I'm in the middle of a seminar that I do called the Delta Experience, and literally that's what we do. I've created these protocols to rewire people's emotional paths, these patterns from their
Yeah,
past.
I want to talk about that. Yes, because you said you're an emotional biohacker. Can you tell us about that? How do you biohack the emotional body? I'm interested.
Well, we all have these set of beliefs that have been created not randomly, those were our experiences. So if we go back and rewire the experiences, we no longer have that belief. So long story short, like that's the simplest way to explain it. So today, like downstairs right now, we have about 30 people in my group. They're going to work to 300 to around 300 to 400 different beliefs they have and rewire them. And those things will no longer hold them back anymore. And my purpose with it, it's, the testing was the physical side, right? But I, like you, am very much on the water, the spiritual, the emotional side as well. This test for me is a connection between matter and mind and the spiritual. It allows people to get their physical code of what they need to do, but then you have to do the emotional work on yourself to allow yourself to express yourself fully. That's what the whole game is.
And what are some of the beliefs that you've captured or you've helped rewire? I heard you say hundreds.
Hundreds. Like, there's gonna be so many. I mean, there's so many. Like, I had a belief for myself that when I started this rewire process, I wasn't the doctor doing it. I was the client, right? And I had created a belief that you could have love or money, but not both. And I was struggling with every dollar I had. I was struggling with every penny. I couldn't make any money. And I built this belief. And that's where I had to rewire that in myself. And as soon as I did, the first day, I was struggling for 9 months and I couldn't make any money. I rewired my brain. And then 3 days later, I made $170,000. 2 days later, I made 120,000. 3 days later, I made another 80,000. I was like, holy crap, there's something to this
And
that I
how do
don't.
you so tell us the secret. How do you rewire the brain when it's got a belief system like that?
Well, you got to find the event, right? Every event, there's a process called the belief inventory that's too complex to go through, but you can take every event. I can take you through a simple 4-step process, right? As you find an event of what's happening, what's the belief of that event? So, for example, let's say you have an event that says, you know what, someone cheated me or someone lied to me. Okay, great. So, what's the belief? The belief that people shouldn't lie to you, right? So, the first step is what's the event? Then the second step is what's the belief? What's the opposite of that belief? So people shouldn't lie. The opposite of that belief is people do lie, right? People do lie. That's reality. Okay, cool. What's the benefit of the understanding that people do lie? That simple 4-step process will rewire any belief you have, any pattern you have, and shift your consciousness from, I would say, a victim consciousness into much more of an empowering consciousness and move you from a state of frozen to action orientation that quickly.
I love this story. Oh my God, we're all going to come and play with you. So
Do
you
it.
have, I mean, it's so clear that I totally follow what you're saying. And without the technology or the Gemini rising articulation, if we can't speak to this or name it or actually call it out, it sits underneath the system and has a party all by itself, not including you. So you have watched people's lives change. I can imagine, including your daughter, the satisfaction. You must be living with the deep feeling of fulfilling your Saturn, the purpose you came down with. And when did you realize it? Did it, because this chart suggests someone who was old when they were young, who came in very serious with a sense of purpose, but had to wrestle to get to that. So what was the turning point?
Um, I knew with clarity why I was here when I was 7.
How did that come upon you?
I don't know. I can't
What,
answer.
what was it that you knew?
I just knew that I wanted to teach people to learn to love their life. That's what I wanted to do. And I don't know if I saw, maybe it was the days of Deepak, watching Deepak doing it and, just seeing that. But I wanted to write books. I wanted to speak. I wanted to teach. I wanted to help people. And I just saw stages and audiences. And I wanted to speak at Wembley. And I wanted to travel the world and help people just learn to live their life. And it
That
wasn't.
is That is Jupiter and Gemini on your ascendant. The ascendant is the soul. So at a very young age, your soul said, I want to speak. It's Gemini. It's the communicator, large, not small. Jupiter's the biggest planet in the heavens. And Saturn gives you the discipline. And so I imagine you have shades of workaholic.
I do. I definitely do. I don't
And
know what it's like, but I love what I do. I don't consider it work.
exactly. And that's what I want to say to all of you, whoever's listening. When you're in love, I have the same truth. When you're in love with what you do, it's not work. And if you're in alignment with your chart, which you are clearly, you don't need astrology. By the way, those of you that don't believe in it or haven't dived deeply, you're doing it. It's a natural impulse. But if there's interruption by your chemistry, by your emotional body, and by your circumstance, and you don't have the will to change that, then we become victims. But I don't think Dr. Rewire is a victim.
Try not to be. I'm sure that the victim consciousness sneaks in once in a while, but I try not to be.
And I love that you ask questions, and that part of your gift is giving people a list of questions to examine where did it happen, what happened, rewrite the story, and then start again.
Yeah, it's like, there's a lot in this world, in personal development, psycho development, a lot of people trying to tell people what to do, right? Like, here's what you should think, here's what you should believe. I sit and say, who am I to tell you what to believe? I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm not here to tell you this is right or wrong or good or bad. I'm just human just like you, but I can ask you the questions that make you go introspective to sit and say, huh, is this true? Is this belief true? Is this accurately true? And then you decipher what's right for you and live your dharmic cause. Like, ultimately, I think that's what I want people to do. That's my mission.
The unexamined life isn't worth living. And for me personally, having been raised in a particular culture, not in India, but in a little Israel, so to speak, in a little Jewish shtetl in a town that I grew up in, the conditioning was, oi, oi. And I kept hearing that whiny verse of emotional, I mean, it was juicy and loving and so much feeling. And so at the same time, it inserted a low level weight. And it took me examining the thoughts. Is it true that I have to live like that? No. Can I liberate myself? So I left. I always tell the story that all my family was from Ukraine and Russia, and I now live in Hawaii. It was like, I don't have to be cold. We can change that story with choice. And that's what is the gift of astrology, the gift of studying the curious mind, which is clearly what you have, Gemini rising with Mercury and Virgo. The high aptitude is what gives us the key to freedom. So for any of you that are listening to this and thinking, I can hear you all, how can I update the premise that lives in my unconscious, which is what you do this technology, find out what your brain, I'm all about supporting your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like when I had the opportunity to speak with you, it was, astrology has been a huge part of my life since I was a kid. It's massively, right? Like, and as I said, I've been around the Vedic astrology system my entire life. And I think, it's like people have different opinions on it. And if I can make a comment on the idea of, I don't believe in astrology, you don't need to believe in it.
It believes in you.
I don't need to. Like, some of the things I've seen in my life, to the day, to the moment, I can't not believe in it, right? I don't know that I sit and maybe if you're a skeptic, if I can answer to this, I don't know that you have to live your life in accordance to it, but you do. I think it's powerful to surrender to the potential that there may be something that's guiding you. I think there's a power in that.
I love that so much. I'm wondering, this is a funny question I'm going to ask you before we finish. I'm interested in your Saturn return because it was so important. What happened in 2006, 2007? That should have been a big turning point for you. Do you remember turning 30? You were just turning 30.
Yeah, I turned 30. 30 was a big year. I claimed who I was. I stepped into that power and much more. I actually put a tattoo of what I wanted my life to be on my shoulder at 30. And then 2008, my son was born. 2010, 11, I separated from my relationship at the time. And that was a whole time in my life of figuring out who I was, what my meaning was, my practice. I had a successful practice. I had patience. I had lots of the money side of it, but I was completely unfulfilled because I wasn't teaching. I wasn't doing what it is I always felt called to do. And I felt I was successful in my little bubble, but my mission was to the world.
Yes. And that is, so there's what made me think of that was what you said about astrology. So at the birth of your child, which was your Saturn return, entered this energy of a shift, of a major shift, and the end of the marriage came with that. And so just so you all know I'm going to repeat myself, Saturn return 28 to 30, at 31, the shift begins. Same thing with 58 to 60, which is where I began my practice as a teacher in my school. But there are these markers in astrology that there's no arguing, that I could turn to the date where he said I tattooed on my arm the dream I have. That's what happens during Saturn return, no matter what system you use. So all that is to say, I'm so grateful that we got to meet. I'm so excited for my audience to know about your work. I will be getting a swab. I'm so interested because I definitely suffer from so much, it's not a suffering, it's more, I have a lot of energy. And the management for me is the opposite of most people, which is they get tired. I just keep getting more and more energy.
Yeah, I get it, right? I completely get it. And when we have that, it's a gift and a curse simultaneously. It's a
As
gift.
is the other side, as is the one that are slower or deal more with introversion or deal more with anxiety. It's everything on this planet is an opportunity to grow. That's why we came here.
I agree with that.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for spending the time with me and going through
Yes,
that.
I'm so excited because when we know that there's a simple technology, and this is the biohacking era, that we can actually make a difference with asking the right questions and being humbled enough to say, I need help, and the magic begins.
Good.
I loved that. What resonated with you the most in this conversation? So informative and interesting. Yes. We are all connected. Yes. I need the test. Hope. So excited. Yes. Emotional biohacking. Yes. The opposite can be true of what we think. Absolutely. Yes. Astrology believes in you. That's right. I love that. I love the message about connecting the mind and the body and finding alignment and balance. Balance is actually one of our favorite words here at DSA. We talk about balancing your elemental constitution. Think about four wheels on a car representing each of the four elements. If one wheel is flat, you can't really drive well, right? It's the same idea with the elements. If one is inflated too much or not enough, it can throw your whole system out of whack. Understanding your elemental composition is our focus in our first class of level 1 of applied astrology. After that one class, people say their lives are changed. Really. I think we've lost count on how many times we've heard that, and that is just the first class of level 1 alone. If you're interested in taking the leap into applied astrology, we have a special pre-enrollment period happening right now. That includes immediate access to Meet the Elements and Meet the Planets, which are 2 class series taught by Deborah. We have a level 1 prep course and student hub resources. This also pre-orders your copy of Deborah's new book or the Missing Element book if you have already pre-ordered your copy. You'll also get that companion tarot booklet that Deborah created. We also are giving you 50% off lifetime Inner Circle membership access from Astrology Hub, and you get first choice to lock in your preferred mentor and schedule for a live cohort beginning in September 2025. So you can take the leap now. Check out all the details at appliedastrology.me. And if you aren't ready to jump into applied astrology just yet, you can head over to IDBIAlive.com to upgrade your event experience now, which gives you lifetime access to all of these event replays. And it pre-orders your copy of Deborah's new book, I Don't Believe in Astrology. And if you're interested in buying multiple copies of the book, remember there are some major bonuses when you buy 5 or 10 copies, and you can check out those details at idbiabook.com. All right, now let's play some music for our final break session before our next event at 10 a.m. Pacific, which will be our final live main breakthrough session of this I Don't Believe in Astrology series. We'll see you all soon. Enjoy this time.